When the top 10 Harvard students gave up, one inspiring black girl shockingly changed everything. Maya Williams stood at the diner's thick glass counter, her breath fogging up the surface as dawn barely lit the quaint Massachusetts town. The smell of sizzling bacon filled the air, mingling with the bitter scent of freshly brewed coffee. Hours before, she had lost herself in dreams, ambitions bigger than the diner's rickety wooden tables and faded menus. She wanted to scream those dreams into the quiet morning, to let them echo, but the early rush was already upon her, and the comforting sound of her mother's voice broke her reverie. Yet, deep down, a gnawing uncertainty gripped her. Could she really rise beyond this? Every morning felt like a delicate balance. On one hand, she found pride in supporting her mother, Annette, a warrior in her own way, diligently serving plates of home-cooked meals to the warm-hearted locals. But on the other hand, the glaring reality of her school loomed large, its spotlight trained on the elite, the wealthier students. Maya's voice often got lost amid the voices of others whose shoes had never felt the weight of her reality. She brushed her fingers over a corner of the unfinished science project left behind by Reginald, her former mentor, when suddenly exhilaration flickered and then faded into doubt. Was she really cut out for research? Before she could linger too long in her musings, the door jingled and new customers came in, their laughter brightening the dim early morning light. It reminded her of the 10 top-ranking students at Harvard, the ones who appeared to have the world hand-delivered on a silver platter. She heard them murmuring about challenges that seemed to deflate their confidence. Did they know what it felt like to not just fight for recognition, but to endure the fight itself? As she poured coffee into a chipped mug, her mind raced. Even today she faced that looming competition, an opportunity to secure her own future. But fear began to claw at her, the familiar whisper of doubt creeping in. What if she wasn't good enough? She wiped her brow, her breath irregular, the scent of grease and hope clashing in her chest. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Back in the diner, tension coiled tightly in Maya's stomach. Thoughts of her mentor surged as she remembered the tales of hardship peppered with triumph. She felt like a mismatched piece in a jigsaw puzzle that never quite fit.
Could she forge her path when a whole system sought to diminish her worth? She fidgeted, the shiny surface of the counter reflecting her turmoil. The past weighed heavily on her, the stories of racial injustice echoing in her mind, amplifying her fears. She breathed through it, forcing back the swirl of emotions. As customers filtered in and out, laughing and exchanging stories, Maya realized she wanted to be their voice, a bridge to somewhere more promising, yet she couldn't battle both her path and the weight of history alone. The diner felt stifling, yet it was all she had, the ticking clock serving as both mentor and tormentor, reminding her of time slipping away. With her heart thudding, standing there with the weight of her community's dreams pressing against her chest, Maya prepared to step beyond the diner's threshold into a future knotted with uncertainty. Could a single girl in an overlooked town truly challenge the illusion of merit and worthiness? What if breaking through meant shattering everything she thought she knew? The question loomed large, echoing and unresolved. Maya stood at the edge of the diner, the cool morning air pushing against her with a blend of excitement and apprehension. She inhaled deeply, trying to anchor herself as her mind raced with thoughts of what lay beyond the familiar clatter of plates and the warmth of her mother's presence. Breathing in possibility, she dared to imagine stepping into the world that had always felt so distant, a world where she could research, innovate, and let her voice break through the noise. With resolute strides, she moved into the bustling streets of her town. The knobs of her resolve were tightening. Thoughts of that competition, the prestigious research program, kept flashing in her mind, demanding her attention. What if this was the day everything shifted? What if this could mark the beginning of her own story of ascension? As she passed by the school, the once uninviting building now appeared less daunting and more like a frontier awaiting her exploration. The atmosphere felt charged. The closer she got to her school, the more she could hear the chatter of her classmates, their voices colliding in a storm of privileges and aspirations. Yet, among the familiar laughter, she sensed something newly profound, an unshakable yearning to assert her identity amidst their narratives. What did they know about unrelenting struggles? Their triumphs often felt like accolades unearned. Could she turn their dismissals of her capabilities into fuel? Maya knew she had a choice to make. She could either retreat into the safety of her predetermined role or dare to rewrite the script. The memory of Reginald flashed vividly in her mind. His infectious passion for science, combined with the heart-wrenching tales of his own challenges, served as both encouragement and admonition. He had faced it, all the rejection, all the setbacks, only to emerge as something greater. She couldn't forget that.
His faltering confidence masked a strong determination that ignited in her an unexpected spark. Sliding into the classroom, Maya felt waves of anxiety hit her one after another. She sat at her desk, eyes darting toward the imposing list of top-ranking students posted on the wall, the big names, the legacies. They were good, no doubt, yet her mind buzzed with the thought of never measuring up. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled out her notebook, the edges frayed, filled with doodles and fragmented prose. They were scribbles of thoughts and ideas, hints and potential. "Today is the day," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible above the lecture. The teacher's voice faded into background noise as she envisioned presenting her project during the upcoming research fair. The idea was raw and unpolished, yet it felt intoxicating. If she could just articulate that idea, if she could make someone believe in it, wouldn't that matter more than the polished resumes of her peers? Suddenly, Maya's determination surged. She scribbled down her idea again, adding layers to it, allowing her imagination to spill onto the pages without restraint. But still, doubt lurked. Was this enough? What if sharing it only led to ridicule? As the day progressed, she made small decisions, talking to classmates, asking questions, volunteering in discussions. Each moment imbued her with a sense of agency she hadn't felt in a long time. But later, as she exited the building, she overheard whispers in the hall, voices dripping with condescension. What makes her think she belongs here? Laughter followed, and it pounded in her ears like a relentless drum. It cut deeper than she expected, reigniting those sparks of doubt. How easy it was for them to dismiss, yet challenge her dream. Clenching her fists, she stepped outside, ready to confront not just her classmates' perceptions, but also the shadows lurking inside her own mind. She took a deep breath and committed to focusing on the goals she had set. As the sun began its descent, shadows stretched long and expectant, mirroring the uncertainty she faced. "Tomorrow," she muttered with fierce conviction, "I'll confront more than just expectations. It's time to raise my voice." The words tasted both liberating and terrifying. What would it take to translate her dreams into action, and who would stand in her way as she began to carve her path? Each thought clenched her resolve tighter, yet the question of her worthiness loomed larger than ever. The path ahead was uncertain, but the challenge was clear. She had to break through. As the sun's first light broke through the horizon, painting her room in hues of orange and gold, Maya woke feeling the weight of her own determination pressing down on her. Today was different. She could feel it in her bones. The experience of yesterday still echoed in her mind, mingling with the resolve that stirred deep within her. Her hands trembled with enthusiasm as she envisioned her idea taking shape, a fusion of science and social impact, driven by personal insight and the urgency to be heard. After breakfast, she faced herself in the small bathroom mirror, looking for a flicker of the fierce confidence she had conjured the night before. "You belong here, Maya," she told her reflection, bridging the gap between absence and presence, doubt and possibility. There was a subtle strength in the way she held herself. It was enough to propel her forward into the day she had envisioned. At school, the palpable energy seemed particularly electric. The hallways buzzed with anticipation for the upcoming research program applications. With each step, Maya felt propelled by an inner force, the whispers of doubt subsiding under the weight of her ambition. Pulling out her notebook, she began to sketch out her presentation, pouring her fear and vulnerability articulately onto the pages, layer upon layer of fear-driven resolve merging into something tangible. Yet, the moment she entered the lecture hall, her newfound fortitude flickered. The atmosphere was heavy with competitive tension as peers exchanged glances filled with unchecked ambition. She caught sight of Pamela, a top-ranking student and star of the science club, confidently discussing her project with a group of admirers. Doubt gnawed at her, urging her to lean back into her comfort zone. But instead of escaping into the shadows, Maya approached her when the conversation shifted to innovation. "I'd love to hear about your project, Pamela," she said, her voice steadier than she felt.
The excitement in Pamela's eyes danced with arrogance, but the conversation slowly became an exchange, a push and pull of ideas. Maya realized that she had knowledge to contribute, that even if they stood on different stages, her perspective was valid. Engaging in that dialogue stoked her fire, and she returned to her desk with renewed vigor. She hacked away the remnants of intimidation with an act of bravery, allowing herself to be vulnerable where it counted most. In the library later, enveloped in stacks of books that smelled of possibility, she began to reconsider her ideas, unearthing deeper connections between emotion and science. The merging of her personal struggles and innovative concepts sparked even wilder thoughts. She could validate her experience as a motivator for change through research. Her idea was a work in progress, even if it felt fragile. The scene shifted dramatically when she confronted Pamela again after school. "I was thinking of adding a section on data representation in my project. Do you want to collaborate on your research methods?" Pamela raised an eyebrow, surprised by Maya's directness. It was a test of sorts. Would Maya shrink back or charge ahead? The pressure hung thick in the silence. "I don't need your help," Pamela replied flatly, before turning her back with dismissive laughter trailing behind her.
Yet, instead of deflating Maya, it ignited something within her. The laughter didn't drown out her dreams. It poured fuel on the fire. Maya resolved to craft her presentation not simply to compete, but to share a narrative that resonated with authenticity, a story woven from her unique experiences and knowledge. As she returned home, biting her lip against the swell of uncertainty, a thought emerged. What if she harnessed that dismissal and transformed it into a call to action? The night sprawled ahead of her, promising both reflection and revelation, as she pondered the challenge that lay ahead. What unseen potential lay within her project? What would it take to ensure her voice was not just heard, but revered? The answer felt tantalizingly close, yet shrouded in the mystery of her own courage, each hour leading to the moment she tested her limits, ready to confront the world that had shaped her. Maya awoke the next morning feeling the lingering heat of inspiration driving her every thought. The spark ignited the previous day had transformed into a raging fire, illuminating the mental pathway she had previously avoided. With unyielding determination, she faced herself in the mirror once more, her reflection radiating tenacity. The school day unfolded like a stage, and Maya was acutely aware that today wasn't just any day, it marked a turning point. The outline of her presentation buzzed through her mind, crystallizing into a coherent concept that entwined personal narratives and scientific methodology. As she entered her science class, every seat in the room felt occupied by expectation. Resisting the urge to retreat, she took her position at the front, heart pounding. Today, she thought, I begin to unravel the true essence of my project. As her classmates settled, she launched into a discussion that fused empirical evidence with her lived experiences. Each word resonated louder than the last as she shared her passion for merging data with hope, science with personal struggle. But as she spoke, she couldn't escape the shadow of Pamela's earlier dismissal. The laughter echoed in her mind, threatening to derail her confidence. Instead of retreating into self-doubt, Maya embraced it. The more she spoke, the more she understood her purpose. Each statement felt like a personal declaration. Her resolve grew stronger as she saw some peers nodding in agreement. During lunch, she sought out her science club friends, aiming to gather insights into their ideas and aspirations. The table was swarming with discussions, yet when her turn to share approached, she hesitated. The self-doubt crept in again. What if they dismiss her? However, the memory of Pamela's laughter surged back, bolstering her heart. I need to give strength to my voice, regardless of others' opinions. With a deep breath, she presented her project concept. To her surprise, instead of apathy, she was met with rather enthusiastic responses.
"What about integrating some visual data representation?" asked Amaya, her classmate known for her analytical prowess. Maya's eyes widened. Ideas began to bounce around the table. It felt like a collaborative, creative force, and in that moment, Maya found herself not just an individual vying for distinction, but a connector, a catalyst. The constructive feedback sharpened her focus. She spent the afternoon sketching possible visualizations, thinking critically about how they could further convey her message. With vivid illustrations, she could bring the emotional stakes of her research to life, perhaps even reach out to those who felt unseen. There was an undeniable power in transforming her vulnerabilities into visual narratives that could move others. But as the day stretched into the evening, shadows began to creep back in. She faced her familiar walls at home, this time with a nagging uncertainty. What if her fresh vision didn't resonate when it mattered most? The sleepless night was fraught with deliberation. As the hours slipped by, she meticulously identified weaknesses in her presentation, questioning every point she initially considered strong. What if she had overstepped the line into melodrama? Yet the very thought of Pamela's dismissive laughter, which had once threatened to paralyze her, now reshaped into an energizing challenge. The moment was coming when she would confront the naysayers, not with bitterness, but with resolve. Each breath was a step toward her goal. It was time to discover what it truly meant to create something that could rally people around a shared vision and ignite change. But she knew that to ensure her voice was revered, she had to take risks, start conversations that might invite further rejection or unforeseen inspiration. What further vulnerabilities shall she dare to expose? Determined, she found solace in knowing that vulnerability held its own power. Tomorrow would mark not just a presentation, but a risk, the risk of bridging her two worlds, the personal and the academic. The question loomed large in her mind. Could she stand on that stage and own her truth? Would bravery redefine her standing amongst her peers? The answer tantalizingly hovered, whispering possibilities that could shift everything. Maya drifted into another sleepless night, her mind a revolving door of uncertainties and ambitions. She tossed and turned, replaying the day's events and analyzing every interaction, every nod of encouragement from her classmates. It was intoxicating yet dizzying. The anticipation of tomorrow's presentation ignited both hope and terror within her. As the morning sun pierced through her window, illuminating the room, Maya drew a deep breath, her heart racing with a tempest of emotions. She found herself standing in front of the mirror once again, not for affirmation, but to remind herself of the choice she had made, the choice to be bold.
The reflection revealed a young woman on the edge of discovery, ready to explore the depths of her own potential. At school, the atmosphere felt different. The usual hum of chatter was laced with an undercurrent of tension. It was palpable in the air as students shuffled into the auditorium, each one carrying their own anxieties about the day. But amid the nerves, the whispered doubts, and the fears of inadequacy, Maya understood this was a moment to reclaim her narrative. As she approached the stage, every step echoed with intention and purpose. The spotlight was hers, not out of chance, but through her determination to articulate a vision that mixed her scientific understanding with personal experience. She took a moment to glance at the gathered crowd, noticing familiar faces mingled with those of strangers, and yes, there was Pamela, sitting carelessly in the third row, her expression unreadable. Maya's fingers brushed against her index cards, a lifeline of sorts, yet she felt a compelling desire to speak freely. A deep breath surged in her chest, and she chose to relinquish the safety of the script. Harnessing the vulnerability she had been cultivating, she began to share not just facts, but stories, slices of her life that composed the very essence of her project. She recounted instances from her childhood, moments when she felt unheard, reasons inspiring her quest. Her voice gained strength as she illuminated how data could powerfully reflect human experiences and allow for deeper connections. The visuals she had crafted became vibrant extensions of her narrative, complementing each point she made. The images flowed seamlessly, each one sparking emotional resonance in tandem with her words. As she navigated through her ideas, glances exchanged and the audience created an electric tension. She caught hesitant nods, raised eyebrows, and even slight smiles appearing in unexpected corners. It was intoxicatingly affirming, pulling her forward. Yet she was acutely aware that it was easy to sway when adrenaline surged and the focus of her peers became paramount. Midway through her presentation, she stumbled upon an unexpected obstacle. A neighboring classmate raised a hand, eyes twinkling mischievously. "Maya, how does being so personal with your data improve the scientific community? Aren't you just drawing attention to your feelings?" The challenge hit like a shockwave, and the room fell silent, all eyes piercing into her. The question echoed Pamela's earlier mockery, dredging a well of insecurities. For a fraction of a second, Maya's heart sank, but instead of retreating, she felt an instinctive urge to confront. "Yes, feelings matter," she countered, her voice steadying. "Science isn't just about numbers, it's about people. Can we truly understand data without the context of lives behind those numbers?" The audience stirred, tangible energy igniting the atmosphere. Maya had stepped off a cliff of self-doubt, courage driving her deeper into her convictions. The words flowed more swiftly, and she poured everything she had into the final moments of her presentation. As she wrapped up,
A deafening silence fell over the room before applause erupted, filling her with a euphoric disbelief. It was more than applause, it was validation, acceptance of her individuality and her stance. As she descended from the stage, adrenaline coursed through her veins, invigorating her spirit. But her triumph was fleeting. She spotted Pamela standing by the exit, an inscrutable smile slipping across her face. Maya paused, her chest tightening as she approached, that prick of doubt re-emerging. What would the remnants of this encounter mean? Would Pamela undermine her newfound confidence, or perhaps respect her for standing tall? Maya took a deep breath, reminding herself of the power she had just wielded. The moment was now, the confrontation she hadn't anticipated, but needed. Uncertainty and resolve battled within, the outcome uncertain as she closed the distance between them. In that moment, she understood that growth often resided in the uncomfortable spaces. Would she rise to meet it? It was time to find out. Maya approached the exit, every step weighted with trepidation. Her heart raced, not just from the adrenaline of the presentation, but from the impending confrontation. Pamela leaned against the wall with an air of casual authority, arms crossed, like a judge presiding over an uncertain trial. "Congratulations," Pamela's voice dripped with honeyed sarcasm, an undercurrent of challenge bubbling just beneath the surface. "You really think you can change the game by getting all touchy-feely with data?" With her heart beating in her ears, Maya felt the sting of doubt creep in. Pamela had always been a source of intimidation, her sharp wit cutting through fragile confidence like a knife through paper. Yet something within Maya shifted. Perhaps it was the liberation she had just experienced on stage, or maybe it was the realization that every setback had forged her resilience. "Actually, I do," Maya replied, steadiness threading through her tone. "Our humanity is what makes data meaningful. Isn't it time we stop viewing numbers as mere abstractions?" A flicker of surprise crossed Pamela's face, though it quickly gave way to a sly grin. "So you think your little story about feelings is going to revolutionize science? You're young and naive, Maya. You're entering a world ruled by stark pragmatism." The words stung, but they also fueled a fire inside her. And I think that's exactly what's wrong. It's too easy to dismiss the emotional aspects undervalued in a so-called objective field. People need context. They need understanding. Maya leaned slightly forward, an instinctive move to take back control of the conversation.
With each statement, she felt herself standing a little taller, unearthing a confidence that had long been buried under layers of self-doubt and comparison. "But it's about results, Maya. People want proof, not sympathy," Pamela shot back, her voice sharp yet almost desperate to rattle Maya. "And emotions aren't part of that? Proof demands compassion as much as logic," Maya countered, surprising even herself with the strength of her conviction. She realized in that moment that she wasn't just defending her theory, she was defending her identity, every story that made her who she was. Pamela narrowed her eyes, as if trying to dissect Maya's sincerity, before breaking into a laugh that was almost dismissive. "You think you can play in the big leagues with that attitude? You'll drown, you know." But Maya stood firm, her heart racing not from fear, but from the thrill of standing her ground. She felt the weight of all her classmates' eyes upon them, not the focused attention of the auditorium, but the quiet scrutiny of their shared experiences. In her heart, she understood she wasn't just representing herself anymore. She represented anyone who ever felt diminished for being too expressive, too vulnerable. "So what if I do?" Maya replied, her voice laced with defiance. "I'd rather go down as someone who stood for a community than be silent and safe, sacrificing all authenticity." A moment stretched between them, thick with tension. Maya's pulse raced, grounded in a resolution that continued to solidify within her. She was not backing down. The wild uncertainty of her emotions transformed into a powerful conviction. "Good luck with that," Pamela smirked, waving her hand dismissively as she pushed past Maya, but there was a fleeting hint of respect in her gaze. Maya exhaled slowly, allowing the relief to wash over her, mingling with the adrenaline still coursing through her system. She was surprised by how intensely she had faced the confrontation and by how it had changed her. Each word she had spoken had liberated pieces of her, stitching together the fabric of who she truly wanted to be. As she turned to walk away, a flicker of realization ignited in her mind. What had begun as a struggle for validation had evolved into a commitment to authenticity,
a promise to herself not to shrink back under the weight of skepticism. With renewed clarity, she recognized the forthcoming challenges. The presentation was just one step. The real journey was understanding how to wield her vulnerability as strength in spaces that expected her to conform to standards of stoicism and restraint. Maya knew she was on a precipice, and the thrill of stepping into the unknown awaited. What other encounters would demand her agility, her emotional articulation, her courage? Would she continue to forge her path, or would past doubts reemerge as new obstacles? The moment beckoned for exploration, and she was ready to embrace it.
With her eyes set on the horizon, she walked away, determined to seek out the next challenge that lay ahead. What lay beyond this newfound courage? Only time would tell. Maya stepped outside, the cool air hitting her face like a refreshing wave, ridding her of the remnants of tension. The din of students around her faded into an indistinct murmur as her mind whirred with thoughts of the exchange with Pamela. She replayed it over and over, committing each nuance of their confrontation to memory. The adrenaline had also blended into a strange sense of euphoria. It was exhilarating to affirm her beliefs so decisively, a feeling she had yearned for but seldom embraced. Yet the fragility of this newfound confidence lingered behind her exhilaration. How would she uphold this sense of self against the tide of doubt and conventionality in her future endeavors? These questions gnawed at her as she made her way to the library, a safe haven she had often frequented in search of knowledge and solace. Inside, the scent of aged paper and leather bindings mingled with the sterile aroma of modern technology, an ambiance that offered both the comfort of tradition and the thrill of innovation. Maya navigated the familiar aisles, her fingers trailing along the spines of books, absorbing their wisdom, but her eyes were drawn to the other students huddled in groups, discussing theories and ideas. She couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and apprehension. What if their pragmatism eclipsed her emotional perspectives? Would she remain an outsider on the edges of their conversations? Determined to forge her own identity within this academic melange, Maya found a secluded table at the back, with sunlight streamed in through large windows, bathing her in warmth. She pulled out her laptop, preparing to delve into the research that had inspired her presentation. As she navigated through articles on data-driven compassion and emotional intelligence, she felt an eagerness to contribute her voice to the discourse. It was time to expand her ideas, to put them into practice beyond mere theoretical frameworks. After hours lost in her work, a chat notification broke her concentration. It was a message from Clara, her closest ally within the program. "Can we talk? It's urgent," it read. Maya glanced up. Urgency echoed in her heart. She knew Clara well. Her friend could tackle anything with a level-headed philosophy, yet when she reached out in distress, it signaled something significant. They met at their go-to cafe, a cozy nook filled with spirited chatter and the aroma of rich coffee. Clara looked troubled, her brows knitted and fingers tapping nervously on the table. "Maya, I'm struggling with how to present my thesis," she confessed, lowering her voice to avoid drawing attention. "I feel like I'm supposed to just present cold numbers and statistics. I don't know how to integrate emotional aspects without feeling like an imposter."
Maya's heart raced at Clara's vulnerability. This was an opportunity, a moment to help her friend find her own voice while advocating for the importance of emotional context in data. "What if we brainstorm together? You have a compelling story behind your research, and it deserves to be told," Maya suggested, igniting a spark of hope in Clara's eyes. As they began to outline ideas and structure their thoughts, Maya found herself becoming not just a support for Clara, but a mentor of sorts. It was a revelation, a recognition that she could leverage her recent personal upheaval in a way that would extend beyond her own narrative. She was learning how to not only harness emotions for her own growth, but to empower others. With every passing moment, the cafe buzzed with voices while Maya's conviction deepened. She could amplify compassion within the realms of data if only she reached out, integrated stories into findings, transformed academic rigor into relatable discourse. This was who she wanted to be, a harbinger of change, an agent of emotional authenticity. The conversation flowed and laughter intertwined with serious deliberation, allowing both women to embody the very principles they believed in. But just as Maya felt fortified by this sense of community, a reminder of the antagonism from earlier drifted into her thoughts. What if her resolve faltered when faced with more scrutiny? The remnants of doubt nipped at her consciousness. Could she transform this moment of empowerment into sustainable change? Maya locked eyes with Clara, her resolve solidifying. The journey toward becoming a catalyst in her field was not merely a dream. It was an evolving reality that she needed to embrace, one that challenged her continuously.
And just as clarity washed over her like the evening light filtering through the cafe window, a new thought emerged. Her commitment to authenticity extended beyond personal validation. It demanded action, realignments, and continued confrontations. Maya surface-checked her resolve. This was no longer just about standing her ground. It was about shaping a narrative where emotion propelled her methods, where she could provide insights others had yet to conceive. What would she propose in her next meeting with faculty? How would she approach this fight to be taken seriously in a world that still prioritizes traditional perceptions? The stakes felt imminent, and with that weighing on her, she knew the fight was only beginning. It was time to step forward, and her next bold move felt crucial. The time had come to face the academic giants. The following morning dawned clear and bright, but Maya felt the weight of anticipation pressing down on her. She was seated outside the library, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, her laptop open at her fingertips. Today was the day she would meet with Dr. Stein, her faculty advisor, to discuss her research proposal, her opportunity to assert her ethos in a critical academic context.
Yet beneath the optimism lay a current of anxiety that threatened to undermine her resolve. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she navigated between the tabs showcasing her findings, data she had painstakingly curated over the last few weeks. Maya had integrated emotional aspects into these findings, weaving in narratives that illuminated the human experience enveloping the cold, hard numbers. But now, as the moment approached, doubts clouded her thoughts. Would Dr. Stein be receptive to her evolving perspective? Would he see her as a serious contender in the realm of academia? Or would she remain overshadowed by more traditional approaches? By the time she entered Dr. Stein's office, her earlier confidence felt like a wispy dream drifting away. The sterile environment was filled with thick tomes and an air of authority that stifled the warmth she craved to cultivate. Dr. Stein, poised behind his desk, gestured for her to sit, his spectacles perched low on his nose as if scrutinizing her every move. "Maya," he said, an edge of formality in his tone, "I've read the abstract of your research. It's unconventional." The pause that followed hung heavy in the air. Inches between them felt like a vast chasm of expectation. Swallowing hard, Maya leaned forward. "I believe that emotional intelligence can enhance our understanding of data. Numbers alone lack the context that can make them impactful. When we connect with the human story behind those figures, we're not just communicating statistics, we're communicating lives." Dr. Stein arched an eyebrow, a slight hesitation flickering in his gaze. "And how do you plan to support this assertion in a quantitative manner?" His skepticism was palpable, as though he were grappling with the possibility of being impressed. Maya's pulse quickened. This was the confrontation she both dreaded and yearned for, the moment where she would either sink or swim. A deep breath steadied her. "I propose a mixed methods approach. I'll incorporate qualitative interviews with participants affected by the phenomenon I'm studying, allowing their voices to inform the quantitative data. This synthesis can redefine how we perceive and apply our research." For a moment, silence enveloped them. Maya could feel the tension in her shoulders, the muscles in her neck tightening with each second. It felt as if she were putting not just her ideas but her very self on trial. Could she endure scrutiny and still emerge whole? Dr. Stein leaned back, folding his arms. "Your approach is ambitious, Maya, extraordinary even. But have you considered the risk? In our field, relying on emotions may lead to accusations of unscientific bias. We wouldn't want your work subjected to critique, would we?" His question landed like a blow. The fear of professional backlash gnawed at her. She could almost feel the collective judgment of her peers surrounding them.
"With all due respect," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt, "a purely data-driven approach lacks the nuance necessary for meaningful change. If emotional truths aren't integrated, we do a disservice to those the data represents." Dr. Stein's expression shifted slightly. A glimmer of intrigue pierced through his initial skepticism, hinting at a begrudging respect. "You present a compelling argument, but putting emotion at the forefront could indeed alienate you from those who don't see the value in this perspective." The conversation veered into an unexpectedly vigorous exchange, their back and forth laying the groundwork for new possibilities. Maya felt liberated, emboldened by the dialogue, and by the resilient fire in her own beliefs. The mere act of standing her ground amplified her sense of purpose. As their meeting concluded, an air of cautious optimism charged Maya's spirit. "Build this research carefully," Dr. Stein advised, his tone softening. "Prove your critics wrong. Earn your place at the table, not just as an anomaly, but as a paradigm shift."
Leaving the office, Maya's thoughts swirled with newfound clarity. This was no longer a simple fight for her ideas. It had evolved into a quest for validation, self-validation, and the affirmation that in blending emotion with intellect, she could carve out a space for her distinctive voice in a realm that thrived on conventionality. Yet as excitement brewed within her, the shadows of doubt flickered again. What if this path she carved out elicited fierce resistance from those who held the reins of tradition? Would she endure the weight of that challenge? Maya tightened her grip on her laptop as she stepped out into the sunlight, determination igniting within her. This was only the beginning. The daunting yet exhilarating journey to reshape perceptions was ahead. Could the next step solidify her vision, or would it threaten to unravel her hard-won confidence? The thought loomed as she prepared to dive deeper into her research, knowing well the trials that lay ahead. Maya awoke the next morning with a potent blend of excitement and apprehension coursing through her. A reflective, transformative energy pulsed beneath her skin, urging her to sit down and dive back into her research. As she pored over her notes, the weight of Dr. Stein's parting words reverberated in her mind. Prove your critics wrong. The pressure to innovate while maintaining academic rigor pressed against her, but she recognized it as a challenge she was now ready to embrace. With renewed focus, Maya constructed a meticulous roadmap for her research. She visualized her qualitative interviews, faces and stories of individuals whose lives were intertwined with her data. Each narrative felt like a building block that would support her findings, elevating the grim statistics into relatable experiences that could spur empathy and change.
The challenge shifted from mere anxiety to an exhilarating opportunity. She would be the bridge between the hard facts and the emotional truths behind them. Determined to gather insightful narratives, she reached out to a diverse group of participants. Her ability to connect on a personal level was evident. Conversations flowed easily, igniting an unexpected spark of creativity. With each story shared, Maya found the contours of her research expanding, enveloping the quantitative data in a rich tapestry of human experience. However, amidst this creative surge, the shadows of doubt remained. What if her interviewees were misunderstood or misrepresented? What if her synthesis of emotion and data led to accusations of bias? The stakes felt dizzyingly high, yet Maya clung to the belief that vulnerability yielded strength. If she approached her subjects with authenticity and care, the emotional fabric of her research could hold its own weight against scrutiny. As weeks rolled into months, Maya also discovered other layers of herself. She honed her analytical skills, interpreting qualitative data through a new lens, while developing the quantitative side of her project with unparalleled intent. The environment became richer. The more she immersed herself in this work, the more her confidence grew. She forged her unique methodology, blending storytelling with statistical analysis, a method she would later dub emotional analytics. However, the academic world was quick to draw lines. During a seminar, as she presented her early findings, an esteemed professor posed a challenge that sent dark clouds rolling across her ambition. Maya, your work, while compelling, seems more suited for a narrative journal than a peer-reviewed publication. Have you considered the repercussions of straying too far from conventional frameworks? His words cut deep. Maya's heart raced, but instead of surrendering to the critique, she felt the defiance surge within her. She had to reclaim her narrative. With all due respect, I believe that moving beyond rigid frameworks allows us the flexibility to glean deeper insights. To disregard emotional truths is to ignore the very essence of the human experience. Gasps erupted around the room. Someone in the audience murmured, "Surely that's conjecture." The tension thickened like a fog as uncertainty swept over her. Who was she, after all, to challenge the foundational beliefs of her field? An entire classroom of peers stared back, half in admiration and half in skepticism. Yet that flicker of doubt ignited a fire inside her. This was the moment to expose her strength, to turn the tide. Determined, Maya detailed her research process with clarity and passion, threading her findings into a compelling narrative. The skepticism of her peers crystallized into curiosity, and she sensed the atmosphere of resistance beginning to wane. When she concluded, the air buzzed with a cautious optimism that had not been there before.
The applause that followed felt subdued but significant. It marked a moment of courage, a small victory in a battle she knew was only unfolding. Walking back to her seat, she caught the eyes of Dr. Stein across the room. His nod of approval sparked a fresh wave of confidence. Yet while that fleeting victory washed over her, a lingering thought tethered her spirit. What if she faced even stronger opposition as she moved forward? Maya sat down, grounded yet restless, her mind swirling in a deep contemplation. Her journey was far from over. The idea of facing her fiercest critics grew heavy on her, mingling with the knowledge that what lay ahead could lead to both discovery and devastation.
Would she be able to maintain this momentum, especially when the inevitable storms of academia would come crashing down? The impending challenge loomed over her, capturing her full attention as she turned the page on this chapter of her life. In the wake of her stirring presentation, Maya sat quietly in her favorite nook of the library, books surrounding her like old friends, whispering tales of wisdom and resilience. The applause still echoed in her ears, filling her with a sense of newfound belonging among her peers in academia. She had navigated the unpredictability of her journey with a blend of emotion and intellect, creating a research framework that spoke to her core philosophy, the power of human stories that underpin data. That day marked a turning point in Maya's life. The fears that had once paralyzed her now transformed into a galvanizing force, propelling her forward. She relished every moment. Each time she delved into her data, each time she gathered narratives that could bridge the emotional gap between humanity and science, she discovered more about herself. The weeks that followed solidified her reputation as an innovator in her department. Professors began to take notice, not just because of the poignancy of her findings, but also due to her compelling approach that combined academic rigor with personal storytelling. Her work on emotional analytics not only resonated with her peers, but also made waves in the academic discussions, as she proved the importance of context in understanding data deeply. During a meeting with Dr. Stein, he leaned back in his chair, the weight of expectation replaced with a glimmer of pride. "Maya, I must admit, you're changing the academic landscape within your field. Your approach is not merely radical, it's fundamentally essential." Maya felt her heart swell, not with pride alone, but with validation. She had proven that her perspective was something to take seriously, that authenticity in academia held significant power. Yet, despite the encouragement from her mentors, internal questions still swirled. What would her future hold? Would her vision withstand the strict traditions of the academic world? Emboldened by her success, Maya decided to apply for a prestigious summer research grant.
This opportunity held the promise of not only securing funding for her work, but also for establishing her as a leading voice in an influential context. Preparing the application revealed her growth. She meticulously outlined how emotional analytics would reframe scientific inquiry, clearly defined her goals, and articulated the impact she aimed to achieve globally. The prospect of empowering communities through her work fueled her excitement. The grant submission day arrived, and an unusual calm enveloped her. She breathed deeply and hit send, feeling more liberated than she had in years. This time, it wasn't just about chasing external validation. It was about affirming her own journey, transforming her narrative from a place of struggle to one of triumph. In the days that followed, as she waited for the decision, Maya poured her energy into collaborative projects with her peers and engaged deeper in community outreach, conducting workshops to explain her research to those who would aim to benefit. Every interaction peeled back layers of her previous self-doubt, revealing clarity and purpose in her voice. She stood before students, scientists, and community members, owning her passion and insights, and she thrived in every exchange. When the email announcing the grant award finally arrived, it felt as if the universe conspired to affirm her beliefs. As she read the words congratulating her on being selected, grateful tears pooled in her eyes. This was validation, not just of her intellectual pursuits, but of her emotional courage and willingness to stand apart from the crowd. Maya's story had become a tapestry of resilience, a narrative carefully woven from the threads of her experiences. No longer did she have to prove her worth. She had established her position clearly within the academic landscape. Reflecting on her journey as she walked through campus, she felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment washing over her. The diner, her mother, and each struggle had shaped her, but now she was ready not just to accept those influences, but to embrace them as integral to her identity. She had conquered self-doubt and emerged recognized and competent in her pursuit. As she prepared to step into the spotlight to present her findings to a broader academic audience, Maya knew she was ready. This was her moment, not simply to showcase her research, but to share her truth. She was not just Maya from the diner anymore. She was Maya, an agent of change, empowered by the very experiences that once threatened to hold her back. No longer was she looking to fit into the academic mold. She was crafting her own. And in that clarity, she found an unshakable confidence. The stories, the struggles, they weren't just stepping stones, but the knowledge that propelled her forward. Her resolve crystallized in that moment, and as she walked onto the stage, she knew she was there to honor every part of her journey.
Now, dear audience, you need to subscribe to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that explore the depths of personal transformation. Leave a like now to help us feed the algorithm because your support is crucial. Comment below with your reactions and theories as Maya's story continues to unfold. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes a real difference for everyone seeking inspiration in their own lives.